Well, good day there, boys and girls. It's Professor Pumpernickel, here to teach you once again more quadratic equations. We'll be solving quadratic equations. Today, the quadratic equations will be in the form of ax squared equals c. Ax squared equals c. To solve these quadratic equations, we're going to solve the equation or write no solution. We're going to write the solutions as integers if possible, otherwise we're going to write them as radical expressions. A radical expression includes a square root symbol. With that being said, in this first equation, example 1, x squared equals 64. I need to undo the x squared. The opposite of something being squared would be something that is square rooted. So I am going to square root. Once you do one to one side, I have to do it to both sides. I have to keep my equation balanced. Now, the square root and the squared cancel each other out, and I am left with x. Remember that something squared usually results in two solutions. The two solutions for this equation are going to be the square root of 64, which is 8, or it is going to be negative 8. You can always double check your work. Take a look. If I were to substitute 8 and negative 8 into the original equation, x squared equals 64, both of them turn out to be true. Here, I'm going to use parentheses to substitute. 8 squared equals 64. 8 times 8 is 64. That one checks out. And I can try the same with my second solution. Negative 8 squared equals 64. Once again, negative 8 times negative 8 is 64, so that also checks out. My two solutions are 8 and negative 8. As I've talked to in my classes, you can also write this as positive and negative 8. Let's move on to example number 2. Here I have r squared equal to negative 9. Once I take the square root of both sides, I am left with r equals the square root of negative 9. Now, can we take the square root of a negative number, boys and girls? At this point in our mathematical careers, we cannot. Therefore, I am going to write what it said to write is no solution. Now, there are a few other types of examples that we are going to get to, and let's do some of them together right now. For example, here in example number 3. The first thing I will need to do is to get the h squared all by itself. In this case, I want to undo the subtracting 54 by adding 54 to both sides. I'm left with the 6h squared equals 54. I then can still want to get the h squared by itself. I'm going to divide on both sides. The 6's will cancel. H squared will then equal 9. Now that I have my variable, even though the variable is squared by itself, I could then square root both sides. Squared and the square root cancel each other out. H equals the square root of 9 comes out to be positive and negative 3. In example 4, very similarly, I'm going to add 5 to both sides to get the m squared, in this case, by itself. So I'm left with a 2m squared equals 27 plus 5 is 32. I will then divide by 2 on both sides. The 2's cancel out. M squared equals 32 divided by 2 is 16. Square root, to undo the squared, and I'm left with m equals positive and negative 4. We're doing so well. Let's move on. We have very little to do left. There's a possibility in another set of your problems for your homework this evening on page 507 that talks about using a calculator to solve the equation or write no solutions. Here, the key point is we are going to round. We will round our answers to the nearest hundredth. I'm still going to solve the same way. I want to get the g squared by itself. I'm going to subtract 7 from both sides on this first equation. 31 minus 7 turns out to be 24. Divide by 3. The 3's cancel. G squared equals 8. To get the g by itself, I square root, and g equals This is where I'm going to go to my calculator. I know I need to go to my calculator because the problem is asking me to round to the nearest hundredth. I have to find what the square root of 8 is. So let's all go to our calculator. The square root button is second, and then the x squared button. I'm looking in this problem, the square root of 8, which turns out to be 2.828. When I round correctly, this turns out to be 2.83. Is that it, boys and girls? I believe I made a mistake. It's not just 2.83. It is, that's right, I heard somebody say it, positive and negative 2.83. Wonderful. Great job. Great job. Let's finish one last problem. One last problem. Here we go. 4/5. Oh, fractions. Fractions are our friends, and we just love them so much. 4/5, p squared. I'm going to subtract 12 from both sides. Subtract 12. I get 5 minus 12 is a negative 7. Anybody know how to undo a square fraction? That's right. Multiply by its reciprocal to both sides of the equation. Multiply, this is a multiply, by 5/4. The fraction will cancel out. I'm left with the p squared equals a negative 35 over 4. Last but not least, I want to get the p by itself, so I square root. Take a look, boys and girls. What do you notice? Oh my gosh, I'm taking the square root of a negative number. Do we know how to take the square root of a negative number? We do not. Therefore, my solution is no solution. I hope you enjoyed this video as much as I have had doing it for you.